Although I've been asked to give you an overview of the situation, the war between Ukraine and Russia, but I've taken the liberty to expand some of my insights beyond the descriptions as to what has happened so far between the two countries. I would like to talk about some of the causes and some of the implications, especially how Russia-Ukraine war has emboldened the far-right extremism in Europe and what consequences this phenomena would have for the world in general and Muslim world in particular. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is often said that plan is the first casualty of war. So is truth. And when we talk about Russia-Ukraine war, there are versions of truth being projected from all sides. Russians, they are portraying this war as a preemptive strike to stop the NATO's expansion in its immediate neighborhood, while Ukraine and its Western supporters, they are projecting this invasion as a part of grand Russian strategy, as a part of Russian expansionist agenda, which is intended to restore the lost glory of the Soviet Empire. But when we talk about the Western perspective on this war, I must say that we should take it with a pinch of salt, given the long history of sophisticated use of information and disinformation by the Western countries in pursuit of their imperial strategy. For last few years, we have seen how Russia and China, they are marked as the potent threats to US-led hegemonic world order after the end of Cold War. Therefore, Western projection of Russia and China could be anything but objective. This war, I would say, has generated a multitude of responses globally. There are those who have taken sides, and there are a lot of countries which opted on pretext of neutrality and with a view to prevent escalation with global consequences, they have opted to stay neutral. But Winston Churchill once said that neutrality during the course of war is a luxury that any country can afford. Therefore, I firmly believe that this luxury to stay neutral will soon dissipate, and smaller and medium powers will be pushed to take sides. When we talk about global South, which largely is composed of the countries which remained on the receiving end of American hegemonic order, there is a tendency to look at this war from an anti-imperialist perspective. At the societal level, President Putin is being seen in these countries as a challenge to American exceptionalism. American exceptionalism, especially after the end of Cold War, which brought to the world, especially Muslim world, quite a few illegal invasions, CIA-sponsored colored revolutions, and corrupt regimes, which were more aligned and inclined towards the West than serving the cause of their people or population. So that is one perspective which hardly find any resonance in official discourse in the third world, in the developing or underdeveloped countries, because of the strong client-patron relations between the governing elite of global North and the Western countries. When we talk about the responses from global South, again, these responses are quite diverse. We can't say that the global South has responded to Ukraine-Russia war as a monolith. When we talk about America and its Western allies, they are looking at this war as an opportunity to isolate Russia diplomatically, militarily, and economically. Economically, Western choices are curtailed due to heavy reliance on Russian energy. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said only last week that an immediate embargo on Russian fossil fuels means bringing Germany and entire Europe into a state of inflation, a sort of economic crisis never seen in Europe after 1930s. So this Western or European aspiration or ambition to substitute Russian energy, I think that is going to be a challenge. Why? Because Europe depends on Russia for 30% of its crude oil and 50% of its petroleum products. And then the Ambassador Brar just mentioned that there are some aspirants who wish to replace Russia as a source to substitute for Russian gas. I think that's practically impossible. Qatar, which is the third largest producer of natural gas, has stated only 2 weeks ago, using this very word, that it's practically impossible to replace Russian gas, which constitutes 30 to 40% of the total volume of gas that is supplied in the world markets. So it's not going to be an easy task. So we can say that Russians have weaponized its energy in the same manner the West has weaponized its financial institutions. So it's basically a tit-for-tat response from the both sides. But what is more alarming for me as a student of counter-extremism and terrorism is the wide-scale mass mobilization in Europe never seen in the recent history, perhaps only seen during the times of crusades. The wide-scale mobilization of the far-right extremists against Russia. According to recent estimates, approximately 50,000 foreign fighters, they have traveled to Ukraine to take part in a holy war against Russia. So Russia yet again faces a different version of jihad. This time, it's not from the turban-clad Maulvis in Afghanistan. Rather, this time it is waged by the skinhead Christians. These 50,000 fighters, they come from 52 different countries, including United States of America, United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, Germany, France, and Eastern Europe, which is in the strong grip of far-right extremism. There are a number of countries where ultra-nationalists subscribing to a very divisive ideology, they have taken control, political control. For example, Justice and Law Party in Poland, for last 6 years, they have formed a majority government there. So you would see thousands of these individuals subscribing to this ideology, traveling to Ukraine. That's quite a difficult task to complete in 10 minutes. Okay, I'll got 3 minutes more, so I'll try to be quick. So these individuals, most of them, they are traveling to Ukraine, joining the training camps established by Azov Battalion. Now, what is Azov Battalion? Azov Battalion is a Ukrainian far-right extremist group which was banned in different parts of the West only recently. But as soon as Azov Battalion started to serve the Western geostrategic interests, Azov is no more a banned extremist organization in the Western capitals. Azov battalion basically subscribed to this far-right ideology that seeks to create the dominance of white race over others. Andrei Britsky, who was the founder of Azov battalion, is on record saying in 2010 that the national purpose of Ukraine is to lead white races of the world in the final crusade. Interestingly, the same guy, he became member of the Ukrainian parliament in 2014. The same guy was at the forefront of Maidan protests, you may remember 2014, which were labeled by the Western media as Ukraine Spring, as protests of democracy versus authoritarianism. But at the forefront were the guys who subscribed to this ideology. So, some more facts to ascertain the seriousness and the gravity of this issue of far-right mobilization of after the Ukraine-Russia war. I would say it was pretty much a cause and a consequence of this war as well. SITE Intelligence Group, which is an open source intelligence company which monitors the activities of extremists of all sorts, they have recently noticed that there's an uptick in the virtual domain. The support for Ukraine in the far-right virtual circles has increased considerably. Number one. Number two, at the moment, the total number of foreign fighters in Ukraine is somewhere at 50,000. Do you know that this number far exceeds the total number of foreign fighters who joined Daesh in Middle East in 2014 at the peak of its power? Interestingly, the foreign fighters associated with Daesh, Western media left no stone unturned to label them as jihadi terrorists and whatnot. But interestingly, foreign fighters who are traveling to Ukraine, their actions are being termed as incredible act of valor by these sons of the soil, by the people belonging to white race. So that's the dichotomy that you see in the framing of two similar occurrences by the Western media. So to conclude, before I get another chit, I know it. I would propose 3 points to ponder. First of all, that no matter which side wins, Ukraine has emerged as the breeding ground of far-right extremism. Thousands of far-right extremists are presently operating from Ukraine, getting combat experience. They will return home to wage violence there, and migrant communities, especially the Muslims, will be on the receiving end of that violence perpetrated by the far-right extremists. So, firstly, the Western media, instead of supporting and backing this migration, they should act as a neutral watchdog, number one. Number two, the European governments must enact the recently enacted laws to discourage foreign fighters from traveling to Ukraine. They brought that legislation to discourage the migration of Muslims to Middle East to join Daesh. I think this is high time that they invoke the similar legislation to discourage this trend in Europe again. 3 days ago, France, Germany, and 4 other European countries have discouraged their citizens to go to Ukraine, but United States of America and UK, the most important contributors to these foreign fighters, are yet to give any official statement on that. Number two, there is much more to Ukraine war than this geopolitics. There's a strong ideological side to Ukraine-Russia war. It may also signal some deep-seated differences and disputes within Christianity, between Rome and Orthodox Russia. So I think the counter-extremist centers working around the globe, they should devote intellectual capital to decipher this ideology, this rift within Christianity, or different shades of far-right extremism, which are mobilizing hundreds of thousands of people to leave their homes and to take part in this holy war. Thirdly, and finally, it is now clear that West is willing to tolerate all kinds of extremism as long as it serves their geopolitical agenda. We have seen that during anti-Soviet jihad in Afghanistan in 1980s. We have seen that in the rise of saffron extremism in India, that how an ultra-nationalist militant organization took control of India twice, but still India continues to be the darling of United States and its Western allies. And again, we are witnessing that in case of Ukraine. As long as these battalions, they are there to fight Russia, we are highly unlikely to see a concrete response from the Western capitals. So instruments such as FATF and other international bodies will only be used against countries like Pakistan, will only focus on the green variant of extremism, because it's the green variant of extremism which supposedly challenge the Western hegemony. Rest of the variants, as long as they fulfill, accomplish, complement the Western agenda, they will be the good boys. Thank you very much.